I haven't.
The Paranomalies podcast would like to thank Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for sponsoring our show. All right. Good evening, Aaron.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing good. Excited for
Good.
tonight. We got
Been a
Holly
busy
Lynn
week.
coming on. It has been. Yeah, I have been absolutely slammed. So I've been
Yeah,
looking
I'm kind of
forward
happy to
this.
take this time and kind of relax and get
Yep.
this time in and chat
Talk
with someone
ghosts.
and just have a good night.
Yep. So yeah, tonight we have Holly Lynn, who has been in the paranormal field for over 30 years. Yeah, she's worked with various teams, and she also is has 2 books out on Amazon. So let's bring her in and learn about Holly.
Hi.
Hey, Holly, how we doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks.
Good.
All right. So, Holly, you've got quite a career in the paranormal. We were talking a little bit before the show started, and over 30 years going now. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I was 18 when I started. My best friend had committed suicide, and I was told he wouldn't get to heaven. So it began my journey to try to figure out what happens to people when they die, and if there is a heaven.
Yep. I think we were at a like a meet and greet and a little seminar we did, and that was one of the big things we talked about too, is kind of, finding the answers to what's out there. And then Aaron's got some questions, that he's been trying to get answered as well, as far as, are we able to travel? He wants to vacation when this is all over. So
I want to be able to, like, do we get to go other places? Are we stuck in our town? Are we stuck in that building?
I hope
Can I
not.
pass? Can I go to Tombstone, Arizona? Can I go to
Yeah.
Sedona? Like,
I want to go to some beach somewhere because right now I live with the Amish. So
Yeah.
see? So you've written, let's start with this. You've had been in the paranormal field. You've been with a couple teams in the Pennsylvania area.
yeah.
Let's start with like a case that you've worked on.
I have to say one of the most interesting cases that I worked on was one that I actually worked for quite a few years. We actually did it as a location for people to publicly go to and try to research. It was a mansion outside of Uniontown, PA. Well, it was actually in Uniontown, PA, and it was called the Keeley Mansion, and it had a little bit of something for everybody. There was so much activity there. We watched windows. They have beautiful stained glass windows in this mansion. He was a coke and coal baron, and this is right outside Pittsburgh. And we would watch those windows morph into things, whether it be lions or whatever. They would literally change as we would be looking at them. Doors opening and closing, things in the basement. The basement was the most hopping place. I would go down there and I actually got jumped by an entity that would started speaking through me. And
wow.
yeah, when we listened to it, it sounded like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. It kept saying, I've got her. I've got her. And I don't remember any of it. They had to literally pull me out. And I have had so many strange experiences there. I was laying on a couch the one night trying to sleep, and I had my head in, because that's what I do. I put my head in a pillow so I can't see anything. And I was inundated with bright lights. And I got up to watch these big, heavy pocket doors closing, and I knew there was only 2 of us in there. And I got up and I said, "Oh, no, no, we are going to respect personal space." And I went to chase whatever it was up the steps, and I got halfway up and it just stopped me. I couldn't go any further.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had found out when the owner came back the next day that that same area, the security door, the fire door, had actually been lifted up off of its little thing that it sat on and was sitting up against the opposite wall a few weeks prior to that. So it was always something. One day we went out to dinner and we came back and we would leave Jenga blocks out. And we came back the one time and it spelled out help.
Wow.
And yeah, so there was, like I said, it was all 24/7 activity. Yeah, it was nonstop.
Did you ever get any answers as far as, what kind of help it was looking for? Or?
No, because every time we would go, it would seem like it was a different layer of
Okay.
something that we were finding. I was doing a lot of historical research on the location. I actually went as far as finding the grave of the man because he actually committed suicide in the garage. And I went, and then it was taken over by a doctor. Now I couldn't find out as much information about the doctor. His family was very against us, advertising anything about paranormal in that place.
Gotcha.
But there was a guy that had been working actually on the house. Strange things happened to people that were involved in the house. The owner's wife actually got to the point where she almost committed suicide. They had a man that was working to fix one of the ceilings, and when he left that night, somebody that was from like way out of the area just came up to the side of his car and shot him. So it was like really weird things would happen. And we had a lot of very odd experiences. We actually did a few, like we called it smoke and mirror type of investigating, where we filled the room up with smoke and put in the grids and sealed off the room to see what we could get. And we got a lot of shadows and a lot of movement. So it was something for everybody. And I think that's why we called it the Paranormal Science Institute, because it really was. We were even doing research into psychic ability. He had a specific machine that he got that he can monitor your brain waves and find out what brain waves you were using. And you could actually make this little ball move up and down on the screen just with your brain waves.
Using like an EEG or something like that.
Yeah,
Was it like a head cap that went over your head?
Yeah, it was a thing that went over your head, and I think it might have had goggles too, but I can't remember. It's been quite a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty cool because I had a traumatic brain injury at 20 years old, and I work in a different realm when I'm using my abilities, where most people I think work Delta. I can't. He said mine was completely opposite of what they would expect someone who's using psychic abilities to be working in.
Okay.
And he thought and he was a psychologist. So his theory was it was due to my traumatic brain injury that my brain got rewired almost.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stories of that happening. People, either their abilities change or they gain them after, a TBI of some sort. So going back just a little bit, because I think it's really interesting. You said you were in the basement of this place and had a spirit talk through you. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like,
Okay, it was me and my best friend. Her and I, we did everything together at the time. We went everywhere. We went so many different places, and this was like our baby location. And we were down there, and she said she watched as my eyes rolled into the back of my head. And she went to get me out of there because she kind of had learned when I was experiencing something, that was no good, my eyes would roll before something would try to take over. And so she was trying to get me out. And she's a very devout Christian. She's praying, saying all the prayers that she was ever taught. And as she's saying, I've got you, don't worry, I've got you, trying to keep me calm, this thing was answering back in that Gollum like voice saying, no, I've got her. No, I've got her.
Wow.
And so, yeah, needless to say, they didn't leave me alone in the house after that very often, because
yeah, fair enough.
every time I would go into
Yep.
the basement, they would find me like sitting in a corner and I'd be staring off into space and they couldn't get through to me. And they were leery because of how the owner's wife would get, and a few other people had gotten suicidal in the house. So he was like, yeah, let's not leave them here alone.
Yeah,
So,
really intense energy there, it sounds like.
and it's very intense. And it's one of those places that is kind of untouched in the paranormal world because, we tried to get the word out there, but we didn't have anybody famous coming in to make videos. So,
Yep.
but honestly, a place that you could get a little bit of everything at. And like, we had experiments where we would put cars out and put tape around the cars to see them move if we weren't there. And we did a lot. It was before I really got involved with tech, because I used to break tech all the time. So I couldn't even have a recorder because I would break it. And since then, I've learned a lot more and have gotten better with tech. I have a bunch of tech now that I have crystal pods and a lot of things that I use when I go out now. So,
Do you have a favorite piece of tech that you use right now?
I love the crystal pod. I actually got it when I was at, I think it was White Hill Mansion in New Jersey, off of a woman who builds them. It's like a REM pod, but it has the added benefits of crystals on it. So people that are into metaphysics and understand crystals, mine is made with ametrine and amethyst. So it's kind of protective too. And then I have a companion device that's called the Seer, made by the same person. And I believe that one picks up on static electricity. So they kind of work together. And now I want to get her new piece because it works with microwaves. And so it's kind of, then I have the triad of
Wow. Okay.
equipment. But yeah, those have become my favorite. I like music boxes too. But I also like, if I had to have one thing that I could take with me wherever I went, it would be my SB7.
Yeah. Yeah. The SB7 is just a solid piece of equipment. I like using that. And then I've got the Yes No Prism that I've actually got sitting behind me right now. I was messing around with that earlier. Gotten some really good responses on that. And yeah, that's slowly become my favorite piece.
Oh yeah, we had the SB7 at Gettysburg a couple of weeks ago, and we got some amazing stuff on the battlefield with that.
The Yes No Prism is pretty friggin' cool. We premiered our first episode back in September on Paraflex. And then instead of doing like a regular after party, hey, everyone will meet up somewhere for an after party, we did an after investigation. So people came that were at our premiere.
That would be cool.
That Yes No Prism, I was telling a story about a person that was hanged in Cheyenne, and it's going off yes and yes and yes. And I was looking up the hang date and I got it incorrect and it hit red. And I'm like, no, I just read that. It's this date. I went back and looked and I was like, oh no, this is the correct date. And then it went green. So it was like confirming my whole story until I was wrong.
Yeah, it was like a lie detector. It hit you on
wow, that's awesome.
2 or 3 different things. And then we decided to test it. And I said, I think I said something like, I'm wearing a red shirt. I usually always wear black shirts. And it went to red. Like it was pretty cool. That was one of the funnest nights I've had with that.
So you were talking about older stuff, but now you have a new team talking to the Dead Paranormal.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that. How's that going?
Well, we just actually, we're not old. We're only a couple of months old. We're still babies. I've been bringing in people that have different, knowledge. I like the science side, but I'm also bringing in people that have the psychic abilities because I kind of like when the two meld together because I'm a big believer in one. You always have one person that's a historical researcher that doesn't share anything with anybody. And then having your science people that are using their equipment, but then having your psychics that are also getting information, and then having your historian come in and tell everybody if they were right or not, according to the history. And I've also found that when you work that way, you find out a lot of things that you didn't know. Like, for example, with me, using my psychic abilities in Gettysburg, we were at Sachs Bridge, and someone was asking me about where were the soldiers hung. I'm standing at the middle of the bridge, and I got this, intense feeling, something happened to someone there. And I'm like, I think it was like, no. The historian's like, oh, honey, no, you're picking up on it was a little girl that was hearing voices, and her mother threw her off the bridge and drowned her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And no, I had never heard that story before.
Oh, yeah.
Just like I would feel like I was drowning, and across the way there's a little footbridge, and a mother was pushing her buggy across there, and I think it was the early 1900s, and it tipped over and the baby drowned. And so it was getting that information from someone that knows the history to verify what you're feeling.
I spent some time out there. I'm getting goosebumps hearing the story. I spent some time out there, and we spent a couple hours on Sachs Bridge doing a bunch of stuff. And I love Gettysburg. Any chance I get, I talk about it. Yeah, hours on the battlefield. You've experienced stuff there too.
Yeah, I have, and my son. My son actually had, we were up at Little Round Top, and he was only maybe 6, 7 years old. And he started, back then they were doing, because he's 25 now, they were doing restoration. So they had a lot of areas roped off where they said, please don't go this way. We're trying to bring back to what it was back in the time of the Civil War. And so he's trying to go over the ropes, and I'm yelling at him, and he screams at me, if that man in a floppy hat can be down there, so can I. Well, there was like 30 people up there, and nobody could see this man in a floppy hat. And then we went to the Ghost Gettysburg tour offices with Mark Nesbitt, and he has a lot of apparitions on the wall in his offices. And one of them is a man in a floppy hat. He was part of the Texas Regiment. And my son's pointing at the wall. There's that man. I told you he was on that battlefield.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's when I realized, hey, he's got stuff going on with him, more than what he was letting on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get Gina out there and see what she gets out there too.
Yeah.
She has some psychic ability, and yeah, it'll be
it's gonna be a fun trip.
Gettysburg is hopping. It's my Disneyland. I always tell people, most people want to go to Florida. I want to go to Gettysburg. I only live an hour and a half away, so I can go whenever I want. Well, and I like to go to Antedium too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, being out east, you got access to a lot of locations out there.
Oh yeah, I've been fortunate enough that I've traveled as far as Savannah, Georgia, and as north as I think Massachusetts is above Connecticut, but they're all over there together.
Yep.
So I've spent a lot of time Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey. I lived in Jersey for a while. Spent a lot of summers in New York. We've done work out on Long Island. So yeah, there's a lot, but I want to start going west. I have been west. I've been to Iowa. We drove there. It took us 2 days. But we went to the Malvern Manor out in Iowa.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. Josh is a good friend of mine, and we spent a whole weekend there. And let me tell you, that's another place that I would love to. I just want to keep going back to.
Yep.
And there's certain places that draw me in like that. So
awesome.
So kind of touching in between, you worked with that the one paranormal group you said in Pennsylvania, but you were telling us about some interesting work that you did with another group called Phantom Detectives.
yes.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, I am the spirituality and occult researcher for the Phantom Detectives LLC. They are, a pretty up and coming group. They're young. There's 3 of them. I wouldn't say too young. Josh is not too much younger than me, but and what I've been working on them with is understanding how spirituality and the occult works in the paranormal. Working with their clients at their own spiritual level. If you're working with Jewish clients, making sure you're honoring and respecting their spirituality so they can understand the things that are happening in the best way they can.
So do you feel that doing that also kind of affects the way that the spirits are interacted with, and that maybe, you leave a place almost better, than you came into it because of the respect and, the religious aspect of it?
Oh, I think definitely, because like with me, I'm an esoteric minister, so I'm interfaith. I believe in all faiths coming together, and each one holds on to something, a piece of the puzzle. I always say it's like a gem, and each faith is a facet of that gem. And when you all come together, you have a beautiful, like a diamond or an emerald. So for me, I like, sharing my knowledge of the different faiths and working with my clients. I've worked with Catholic clients, I've worked with Muslim clients, and I think working with them on their level is very important to them, because I think they get a better understanding of what's happening in a way that they can understand. And if they need help, connecting them with an imam or a rabbi or a minister or, a priest or priestess is important to them. So they have that extra cushioning of help if they need it.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you come in and provide them a solution if they need in a way that they understand, right? The way that they can relate to.
Oh,
Because I think
definitely.
a lot of teams that do banishing or cleansings and stuff like that, they come in and it's the way that they know how, is how they go about it. So that's got to take a lot of research and a lot of coordination, right? To get
And it does, because I have, I'm half a native. I'm Oglala Lakota and Umatilla. And I'm Scotch Irish. So a very eclectic mix. Um, but I always start any investigation, no matter where I am. I give an offering of tobacco to the ancestors, because at one time or another, everything in this country was native land. And I think by honoring those people that were there, it also helps the investigators to not have as much things happen to them, unless they're me. So,
right.
because I did Hinsdale, the Hinsdale house in New York.
Okay.
And when we pulled up into the driveway, I literally sat in the driveway with my hands over my head, because I could hear chanting coming from the
Oh
woods,
wow.
drums and, what I would call like powwow chanting, war chanting coming from the woods. And I just could not get out of my car. And the group that I was with, they were laughing because they said, "Oh, here she goes again." So, and it did it, but I actually felt safer sleeping out there in my car than I did sleeping inside the house.
Oh really?
Yeah, I actually slept in my car that night. I was waiting to like wake up and see like a native elder
Just
standing like
standing right over
outside
you.
my
Yeah.
window. I had my coat up over my head, and I just slept in the car because I wasn't sleeping in the house.
Yeah, so like I was saying, out east, man. Yeah, you got access to some really, really cool locations. So, did you only do the Hinsdale house that one time, or have you done it a few times?
No,
Or
I want to go back. I did it once. I did Wildwood Sanitarium once. West Virginia Penn 3 times.
oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm a kind of I hate prisons, but that prison for some reason keeps calling me back. And each time we go there, I find a little bit more out about the location, because I go in blind. I don't like to know anything that's happened or anything that will happen. And so I try to steer clear from other people's information. And so that place is one that I've been to, and I probably will go back to again at some point.
Nice. So, yeah, going back. So, what's your favorite location out east that you've
Oh
been
my
to so
goodness.
far? I
Oh my
know
goodness.
there's so
That's
many.
everybody asks me that. I think I have a different answer every time, because I was actually just talking to someone that had shared an event that they're doing at the Palmyra Historical Museum in Palmyra, New York. And I had an opportunity to investigate there with some of my friends. And that place is insane too. There's like a group of buildings. We investigated the house, and we investigated the general store.
Okay.
And it was interesting because I don't hang around when they're telling the historical stuff to the other girls that were there. And all of a sudden I started sweating and I'm pulling on my jacket, and I ran out of the building. And it was like about 15 minutes later, one of the girls came out and said, "Are you on fire?" And I'm like, "How did you know?" And the lady told them that the original home that was there burnt to the ground, and that all the rafters underneath were from the original home, and they're still charred.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, and then, as we were going through the night, we went upstairs, and I get upstairs, and they have in this one room, like a lot of equipment for field hospitals and stuff like that from during the Civil War. And I thought for sure, oh, here we go. I'm going to get one of my limbs cut off or something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I start grabbing my abdomen, and I'm like screeching at the top of my lungs every time I go near the room. And here we had found out they had an old abortion kit that had been
Oh wow.
donated to the museum. And that I was experiencing that. And it was the freakiest thing ever. Like, I walked into another room because we were not far from Hill Kamara, where John Smith got the stones for Mormonism. And they have a picture of him there and of all people, the Fox sisters, like in one room. And I'm like, wow, that's an odd couple. As soon as I walked in that room, that picture said to me, "You don't belong here." I'm like, all right, see ya. But yeah, but I felt most comfortable in the room with the dolls, all the freaky dolls, and that's where I went and felt safe.
Nope.
I have freaky dolls. My kids will swear up and down that they're haunted, and I laugh at them. They swear they move. I have 2 huge, big Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls from when I was a kid, the same size as Annabelle. And I would go out to Connecticut in some of Lorraine's events. And when I would come home, I would conspicuously find this doll all over my house. My kids thought it was funny to move because they knew that was one of the few things that scared me.
Right. Yes, of course they jump in on that, right?
Yeah, and so that's what they would do. They would move that. That was like their joke when I would come home from events, was to move Annabelle all over the house.
Oh my gosh.
And my doll wasn't named Annabelle, but that's what they called her.
So it definitely seems like you're more on the the very sensitive side of the spectrum there. So what kind of steps, and you don't have to get anything too personal, but what kind of steps do you take to protect yourself? Like you said, you're walking into these places and you're feeling this extreme pain in your stomach, and you're having entities speaking through you, right? So yeah, what do you do to protect yourself?
Sometimes nothing. Simply because I like to know what's going on. I'm nosy.
Fair enough.
I always say that because even now, like when I'm here at home, I always like to have one foot here and one foot on the other side, because I'm nosy. I need to know what's going on at all times. But I do use amethyst, tourmaline. I learned smudging ceremonies from my grandmother as a child. So I do a lot of that with, sage and cedar, sweetgrass and tobacco. I have a crucifix that is and I know the name of it, but I always forget it. A Benedictine crucifix. It actually has the Exorcist Benedictine medal in the middle.
Okay. Yep.
And it was actually it was blessed with oil that was touched to Padre Pio's glove. So that's like a very important, I bring things from all of my belief systems. I was raised Catholic. So I still hold on to a lot of those Catholic, beliefs, even though I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. I have scapula, I have rosaries, I have malas. It depends on what I feel I need to what I use. And a lot of times it's as much as standing outside a location, I pick up rocks and I put them in my pocket. And then when I'm leaving, I take those same rocks and I leave them there and say, okay, now you have to stay here too.
Interesting. So when you have experiences, right? Like for example, that pain in your stomach, when you walked into that room with the abortion kit, are you able to, pull yourself out of that if it gets too intense, or are you kind of at the whim of whatever's
Sometimes I
happening?
can, but I'm usually with people that I trust, that if I can't do it on my own, I always have what I call a rock.
Okay.
And that's
Yep.
someone that has like
Just
zero
solid
abilities
teamwork.
that I
Yeah.
can hold on to and just have everything go away. Or I hug a tree. That, believe it or not, like everybody laughs when they see me do it, but it is one of the best things for me if I can get to a tree, a big one particularly, and just hold on to it.
I can see that though. Something natural, getting grounded again.
Yep. And water. A lot of times, the flowing water, just going in, running water in a sink can help calm me down.
Well, good. Yeah, I'm glad you got a way that you can calm yourself down. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just going to say, she was talking about the crystals. We need to take just a moment to talk about Twinkle Twinkle Little Store. Holly, we're going to be right back with you. We're going to talk about our sponsor real quick. Twinkle Twinkle Little Store. Last night, Jason was the best of Cheyenne for 2024, and they won 3 awards.
I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah, so this is going to be 22, 23, and 24 that they've won stuff for the best of the best. They won Best Boutique and Gift Shop. They won Best Antique Coins and Collectibles. and they won best jewelry store. So yeah, they have some great stuff in there. Crystals, jewelry, amethyst, all that stuff that can help you protect yourself against anything or just to look pretty.
Yeah, I love going into her store, and her and her husband are just, I mean, wonderful to work with. You know, you just sit there and talk with them, and very knowledgeable about what they got, but just very nice people as well. So yeah, when I saw that announcement of getting the award last night, I was really happy for them. They
Yeah, I
think they
was too.
deserve it. They're really good small business owners in town.
Yep. They have that downtown location at the Tivoli, 301 West Lincoln Way. They also have a
Love that
location
building.
on Ridge Road. So 2 locations in town. Go in there, see them, tell them we sent you in, and tell them hi. Patricia and Tim are great people.
Yeah, we started, going to see them when they were at the Ridge Road location, but I tell you, the Tivoli building, that is the perfect location for a shop like theirs. It just has its own atmosphere to it that adds to it. I love going in there.
Yep. They got that big dragon right inside.
Yep.
So we'll bring Holly back and chat with her some more. Books. They have books and all their stuff, and she wrote some books.
Yeah. All right, let's bring Holly in and talk about books.
Hi,
All
guys.
right, Holly is now back with us. How we doing?
Good.
All right, so we were just talking about Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, and how it was a good segue from the stuff you were talking about to what Twinkle Twinkle offers, and then we got on the subject of the books that they have as well, which another segue into you have 2 books currently published on Amazon. The first one, My Journey Out of the Darkness. Would you tell us about that one a little bit?
And that it actually talks about my life, my early life when I was first learning that I had abilities, and then I stifled them because my family was a very devout family and they thought I was possessed by demons and needed an exorcism. And so I didn't work or do anything with it for a long time. And then I guess the way I was taught is you always have that breakdown or breakthrough at some point if you keep stifling. And I did on 9/11 because I had personal involvement in the day. My priest from childhood was on one of the planes, and I had family members that worked in the area. And I started getting overcome with all these feelings and sounds and noises. And yeah, I had a baby, a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old. And I thought I was going crazy. I literally had myself committed to a psychiatric institution. It was a long couple of months for my poor husband because he didn't know what was going on with me. All I kept saying is I keep hearing dead people.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was going on because I didn't have anybody in my life like that could explain to me what was going on. And so it talks about that and my earlier career in the paranormal, like the first team I worked with, and some of the cases that I did. One of the earlier cases that I did, actually, now I would know that it was something evil and demonic that we were working with. I had a crucifix thrown across the wall, from the wall to me, and stuck in my leg. I still have a scar on my leg where that got stuck into the side of my leg. And I learned a lot about what not to do as an investigator. I was only 18 and these were grown adults that should have been teaching me better, but unfortunately they weren't. So I talk a little bit about that and a little bit about the things my kids experienced. And, just to kind of help people understand that they're not alone in hauntings. They're not alone in psychic abilities, and that it's not something to be afraid or ashamed of.
Yep. Yeah, that had to be difficult, suppressing it for so long and then kind of having the floodgates open on you, right? And all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah, it was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. Like I said, I literally thought I was going crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that. That'd be very intense.
And then when I figured it out, it became like a joke. I became like the kid from The Sixth Sense. Instead of I see dead people, it was I hear dead people.
Yep.
But now I see them. So I guess the more, like from what I've been taught, the more you use it, the more you acquire. It's like any other muscle. The more you strengthen it, the better it works.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're able to control it a little better and
Mhm.
probably maintain like the tempo of stuff coming in, and it's not a floodgate anymore, or at least not
Oh,
as
yeah,
much.
definitely not. I'm
Good.
able to shut it off, especially, like, our house seems to be like a beacon. I have 2 children with autism, and, well, now only 1 lives at home, but it just seems like for some reason these kids were very in tune with that other side. Oh, how old was I? Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think. 2001, was when realized. So I'm gonna be 50 this year. So I was in my 20s. I knew when I was younger because I would always hear and see things, and I would say things to my mom, and she would yell at me like, "You shouldn't know that. Where did you hear that?" And I'm like, "It was they told me," and she's like, "You're crazy." Or you're possessed. She actually took me to the priest and asked him to exorcise me.
Oh, jeez.
Did
Yeah.
they follow through with the exorcism, or
No, he said prayers, and but I was the difficult one from a very young age. I was always questioning authority and religion. I thought I wanted to be a nun, so I
okay?
thought I had to learn everything I could about it. And so I would read, like, I read the Bible from beginning to end probably about 20 times in my life. So I would ask questions like, "Oh, okay, you say this purgatory is a place, but why isn't it mentioned in the Bible?" And he would yell at me, the priest. So he would
Yep.
tell me stop reading it. And sometimes things are just understood. And and I think that's where be getting involved in the paranormal is also part of that because of those questions that I always had.
Great. Your second book. It's
Yes.
Jason wrote down the name of
The,
it there.
the Witch's Book of Things.
Yes, The Witch's Book of Things is a beginner's grimoire or book of shadows for any type of witches. Back during COVID, we have a witches group on Facebook. We have 13,000 members about in Pennsylvania, and it's a witches of PA group, and it is for our PA witches to connect together. And we have religious, non-religious, atheist, witches of all kinds, like ceremonial magicians, Christian witches, Wiccans, and we were finding a huge plethora of misinformation on TikTok, geared
Oh,
towards,
imagine that.
yeah, imagine that, geared towards baby witches. And that's what they coined themselves. We don't like calling them that, us crones, but we call them that because it's their words. And but they were teaching them things like hexing the moon and hexing the fae, and all these things that as older, no, wait, no, you don't mess with the fairies. And we need the moon. So I decided to get them something to put them on like the right foot. Because when we had all started as younger kids, in the 80s and 90s, it was a lot of legwork to learn this stuff. It was still taboo. You would like go down dark alleys and in back doors to these little shops. And, it's become very mainstream now where people aren't afraid to talk about it. And, I wanted to give them something that they could have that would give them a strong beginner's knowledge, whether it's candle magic or color magic or moon magic or herbs, because I felt if they had somewhere solid to start, they would start doing their own research and not relying on, influencers on TikTok that don't care about them, that only care about, their views.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And social media and the internet in general, obviously, blowing up over the past 20 years, it has been great, right? You can
Yep.
find information on everything, but unfortunately you can find a lot of misinformation on everything as well. So I think it does a really good job at helping to get people involved in certain things, but then through trying to do the right thing and study and learn about it, you can actually be misled completely down the wrong path. And yeah, the knowledge isn't really acquired or earned, right, through that
Right. And it's
diligent research.
and with people that get involved in witchcraft or any magical practices, there's so many like folk practices that they can inadvertently get involved with that can harm them because it's not meant for them. whether it's Appalachian magic or, Stregheria, which is Italian witchcraft, or Romani witchcraft. It's important for them to understand the cultural boundaries. And of course, that wasn't being taught either. So we have this, younger group of people coming into the craft that think they could do whatever they want because someone on TikTok told them they could.
Yep.
So now we've been diligently working to try to reverse that. It's something that I do a lot of educating about too, is the importance of cultural, things for people. Like, go with the things that your people, your culture, your ancestors, not some tribe that you never belonged to, that those ancestors don't know you.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, it seems like you're doing a good job of, identifying a problem and then, trying to find a solution to help people with it. And, from the work you're doing, with the paranormal teams, as far as, bringing in different religions to help to, your work with that, that Facebook group with the witches, you said you had over 13,000 members.
Yep. We're just almost at 13,000.
That's impressive.
Probably
So,
by next week, we'll be at the 13,000 mark.
and what's the name of that group so that we can,
Yep. Which is a PA.
which is a PA on
Yeah.
Facebook?
Very easy. And we have subgroups because PA is very regional. I live in quote unquote the coal region. Yeah, we have our own dialect. We have, we have our language they call Hainabonics, because most people in other parts of PA can't understand people from our area of PA. We have the Pittsburgh PA, they have their own dialect and their own, it's like we're like a little country in Pennsylvania unto ourselves. Yeah, we have the Amish, which a lot of them speak the Pennsylvania Dutch. And so it's really, we try to keep people within their region so that they can kind of connect. And hopefully, like we used to have get-togethers all the time in the coal region. We would pick different locations. We had a coffee shop that was built in an old Episcopal church, and we would go and meet there. And sip coffee and chit chat about our craft. And a lot of us are just simply like what you would think are like herbalists and little old wise women that just want to share what knowledge we have.
Interesting. We had Tina Laura said she's very interested in the witch thing. She has some books as well. So yeah, maybe she'll get pointed over in your direction. You guys can, give her some direction of groups to join for out in this
Oh,
area.
definitely. We're actually building, we call it Witches of North America, because we were finding a lot of people from outside of Pennsylvania wanted to come into our group. So we're slowly starting to try to add people to that group, simply to give, because we didn't realize like how much of a need there were for, because there are a lot of pagan groups, but people don't realize that, witch doesn't mean pagan. You could be sitting in church on any given Sunday, and you could have a witch sitting next to you and not even know it. Because
Yep.
it's not a religion. It's a craft or a path.
For sure.
Interesting. Sorry, I thought you were going to talk, Aaron. I didn't
No, I
want to step
wasn't.
on you.
Go ahead. You're good.
No, go for it.
You're doing well.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little more, kind of bounce back to your group, Talking to the Dead Paranormal. You, as we said before, the founder of that group.
Yes.
And you talked a lot about, the historic research that you do. And us at Way Out West Paranormal, we also do a lot of historic research, into these sites that we, investigate, and we come across some pretty cool stuff. Does your historian investigate with you? Or is that kind of a separate?
No, I prefer that they come in after the investigation. Especially when it comes to psychics, I think a lot of times we can be given impressions without intentionally be given impressions. So I don't want anyone involved with me that knows anything about the history until after I've done a walkthrough, at least. So
Awesome.
I can read what's happening. I like to It was a rule that I learned in one of my groups when listening to EVP. Don't ever shout out what you hear. Write it down instead, and then let everybody turn it so no one's given that impression of
Yep.
what you thought they heard or what you see.
Yep.
And I do that a lot. Like when people are like, I hear this on this video, and I'm like, please don't tell me because now I'm going to hear it,
Yeah.
and that may
Yep.
not be what was said. So I always say write it down, and that's something that I'm trying to teach to the people that I'm bringing into my team, because some people don't do those practices, but that was something that I learned very early in my career, back when we used to carry around a tape recorder and a microphone.
Yep.
Or even if you think you see something, don't say
Don't
what you
say what you
saw.
see. Yeah.
Right. Write it down and we'll come back.
I
around to it
am
and-
the worst for that, because especially if it's a psychic impression that I'm getting, I will literally shout it out. Oh my God, I see a man with black hair and green eyes. And they'll be like,
Oh, I saw him too. Yeah.
yeah. But no, thankfully I've only ever had that once, and it was my daughter that was with me. And she said, "Oh, he's not in the room." She thought he was a real person.
Oh,
So yeah. Well, he probably was at some point, I told her.
at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, so that to me is a big thing. Like, I like to bring the historian in after when we've listened to EVPs, we're trying to write up and then compare what we found to what they found.
Interesting. Yeah, I
I
like
think we're
that
a little
kind of going
different
in
there where
blind.
I think we're a little different there where we try to do a little history of the building and try to bring that history in with us. To
Right.
see if we can maybe contact someone from that
And I have done
business or
that.
from that house or from whatever we're investigating.
Yeah, we actually have an investigator that comes through the area, and he's written books on haunted excavation. And he does a lot with the coal mines and stuff like that, but he's one that believes that you can get better I don't know, better evidence if you pick a time period and literally play that time period. Like, if you want to learn about the Civil War when you're investigating, dress like you're part of the Civil War and listen to the music that was played during the Civil War, talk like they talked during the Civil War. So when I go to Gettysburg, I always say, give me the koosh, because that's what they called food back then. But my kids, being my kids, think I'm asking for something else.
Yep.
And they're like, Mom, you can't go around saying that. But I'm like, but you got to understand dialect back in the day. And
Right.
because like my youngest especially is very interested in the paranormal. So with the older two could care less. They just would rather not deal with it.
Yeah, I think that's the same with our family. Like Gina and I, and we enjoy it, but I think all the kids are like, have fun.
My husband does not enjoy it. My husband's a UFO guy. So I always make jokes to him about the UFOs, and he always makes jokes at me about going and playing with my ghosts.
Nice.
Because we're actually going in Carbondale. They're having a Carbondalian festival back in November 1974. I only know this story because I grew up there and heard this story multiple times. I was born in December of 74. My great grandmother and several other people witnessed a UFO crash. And my mom was pregnant for me, like really pregnant. And she went looking for this UFO, and they were told it was a lantern that fell off a train. Then they were told it was a car that crashed into a pond. And my great grandmother, up until the day she died, said, why were the lights still on underwater? And when they finally took it away, they took it away on a flatbed tow truck covered with tarps. So this will be the first festival they're having, and I'm taking him up for that because he's all into the alien stuff. And my mom has told the story so many times for us growing up, and he's heard it so many times that I said, let's go see an alien festival. And, a friend of mine is going to be there presenting. So I figured might as well go see them too while we're there.
That'd be a
Nice.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah, I've
aliens
never
and
gone to an
UFO stuff.
alien festival. So this will be my first. I've gone to a lot of paranormal things, but never. Mothman is the other festival that I want to go to, the Mothman festival, because I'm obsessed with Mothman. I did a Bigfoot festival over the summer. I was actually selling things and doing like my books and stuff at a Bigfoot festival here by my house. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, my wife and I went to one a couple years ago up in Estes Park in Colorado. That was a blast.
that is a bucket list place for me, man. Estes
Yeah.
Park.
Oh, it's beautiful
Cool
up there.
place. Beautiful. Yeah, we're stuck out here in the middle of, well, the edge of Wyoming, and we don't get all those cool cons and all the festivals like back there. So
Well, you got to make your own then.
one of these times we'll probably make some trip out that way. But yes, we do need to.
That's how we started. This Bigfoot festival is only the second year. And it's a friend of mine that actually started it. And she started with 8 vendors and no food trucks. And this year she had 60 or maybe
Oh,
it was
wow.
80 vendors and 8 or 10 food trucks. Tons of speakers came in. And now she has even more planned for next year. She has a speaker coming all the way from the UK next year.
Oh, geez, it is
Yeah.
something we
That's
talked
awesome.
about, and it's definitely on the list. But we have checked a lot of things off of a list just this year, and we need to.
Yep.
We're
Yeah,
kind of
that's
excited that November, December, and January are coming, and we're gonna take a
what I
little
keep saying. I
roll
get
through
my
the
break.
holidays.
Yep, I get my break. I don't travel when it snows.
Yep.
I don't like to drive in the snow. I don't like to drive, but the snow makes it worse. So, and it gets dark earlier, so I try to steer clear of nighttime driving.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we've got I-80 here that usually closes 3 or 4 times a week, if not the entire week during
I
snowstorms.
live off of I-80. So we're literally connected then, because I literally live off of I-80.
Oh, that must just be a short jump then.
Runs
Yeah,
right through
well,
the middle of our
sure.
town.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how we went to Iowa. We literally took 80 right
Yep.
out into Iowa. So I'm sure if we kept going, we would have. I wanted to
Yep,
go
you'd
into
run into
Nebraska.
Cheyenne eventually.
Wow, I wanted to go into Nebraska because we were literally like a stone's throw from Nebraska. So I just wanted to go into Nebraska to say I was there.
No, you don't. We driven through Nebraska so many times. This year we went to Kansas, and I don't know which is a rougher drive, through Nebraska or through Kansas.
Yeah.
That you
Yeah,
haven't
70 was
driven through
rough.
PA.
Honestly,
PA
I drove
is
from Baltimore
worse.
when I went to Gettysburg. You know, it's on the edge of Pennsylvania, but
Yep.
it's beautiful up over there. It's
Oh, it is,
absolutely
but it
beautiful.
is the longest drive. I literally live in the center. So I'm like an equal distance from Pittsburgh and Philly. And yeah, it is, even from where I live to go to like Baltimore or anywhere down south, it is such a long and horrible drive, because I hate to say it, but people don't know how to drive in Pennsylvania
Oh, we drive everywhere out here, so driving
or
is
New York.
cool for us.
Yeah, we get like it's I think this pocket of the Northeast, we have New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia. They're like all bad drivers.
Yeah, I used to live in North Carolina and travel up there a little bit off and on. And yeah, it was definitely interesting driving, but I will say at least you guys have trees. Us is,
Yes.
you know, the rolling plains of nothing.
That's what happened to me when we got past. We spent the night in Joliet, Illinois, which I didn't know was a bad area. I just seen a cheap hotel and I said, let's pull up here. It's like 2 a.m. Let's get a couple hours sleep. We woke up to police sirens at the hotel next to us.
Oh no.
But we were safe. We got back on the road, and then a little ways past there, I felt like I was in an episode of Little House on the Prairie. I was literally waiting for the kids to come down off the little tiny hill. And yeah, it was like, I was like, oh my God, how do people drive out here? I would fall asleep.
Yep.
Because it was just flat, where we're in the Appalachian Mountains. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
maybe that's why the roads are so bad everywhere out here, Aaron. That's their way of keeping us from falling asleep.
could
Right.
be.
Definitely, yeah. They holes everywhere.
No, that's
Yep.
PA too. We are the pothole capital of America.
Well, Holly, it's been a pleasure having you on. Your books, Jason's going to tell us the name of those books again.
Yeah, so we've got My Journey Out of the Darkness and then The Witch's Book of Things, that are both available on Amazon.
You told us you're working on some more, so we'll look forward to seeing
Yep.
and hearing about those. When those come out, when you get 1 or 2 out, we'll bring you back on and chat about those.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks
And
for
we
having me.
will tell everyone, go over and check out does Phantom Detectives have a Facebook page?
Yep, Phantom Detectives LLC.
Okay. And then Talking to the Dead Paranormal. I know you have one. I went and looked at that earlier today.
Yep, and I also have a website. It's just really easy. It's HollyFaust, FAUST.com.
All right. Well, thanks
All
for
right.
coming
Well,
on.
yeah, it was great talking to you, Holly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. You take care.
Well, that was great talking to Holly tonight. Lots of information on witches and the paranormal field that she's been in for some time.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing how she kind of got her start as a psychic, and I'm always curious about how people like that deal with the emotions and the feelings that they get, and how they can protect themselves and not just get overwhelmed with it is what I'm always so amazed with, right? Because it just
Right.
seems like that constant barrage of input would just be overwhelming.
Upcoming stuff for us this weekend. There's 2 tickets left to our VIP investigation at the Nelson Museum of the West. Go grab those tickets because you don't want to miss that place.
Now, super awesome place. We did our first Paraflix episode there. Definitely didn't disappoint. All I'll say for people that haven't seen the Paraflix episode is there is an amazing Estes session on there that one of the coolest I've ever been a part of. So definitely check it out.
Had a great session.
Yeah.
Paraflix, if you get it, WOW 25 will save you 25% off your first year.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We are now on Apple Podcasts as well and currently working to get Spotify. So right now you can check out the stream on Facebook. We've got it up on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and hopefully Spotify this week. So yeah, if you don't see us here, we'll see you there.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
The Paranomalies podcast would like to thank Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for sponsoring our show.